The front door clicked shut behind my sister, and the house went quiet. In that way it only does when someone leaves and takes their energy with them. No car engine yet, just silence. The kind that sits heavy for a second before life goes back to normal. I was standing at the kitchen counter staring at the plastic bottle Andrea had lined up so neatly next to the coffee maker. Vitamins, supplements, all the stuff people my age are supposed to take if they want to keep up. She had said that phrase twice like she'd practiced it. Don't forget these, she told me, tapping the lid with one perfectly manicured nail. You've been pushing yourself too hard again. I nodded because that's what you do when your older sister is in lecture mode. Andrea always talked like she knew my schedule better than I did. Maybe she thought she did. I unscrewed the cap and shook 2 pills into my palm. They looked harmless, beige, chalky, the kind of thing you'd find in any pharmacy aisle in America. That's when I felt it. Not fear, not yet. Just the sensation of being watched. I turned around. My daughter Lily was standing in the hallway barefoot, her hair still half tangled from sleep. She was holding her stuffed rabbit by one ear, dragging it behind her like she always did. Her eyes were locked on my hand. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She opened her mouth. Mom. The word landed wrong. Not because it was loud, not because it was dramatic, but because Lily didn't talk. Ever. For a split second, my brain rejected what my ears had just heard. I waited for my mind to correct itself, for the sound to rearrange into something else. A cough, a breath, a noise. Mom, she said again, clearer this time. The bottle slipped from my fingers and hit the counter pills, skittering across the surface like tiny dice. I didn't look at them. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Lily had been diagnosed with selective mutism when she was 4. That was the official phrase. The doctors used calm voices and laminated charts. They explained how some kids speak in certain settings and not in others. They told me not to push, not to pressure, to be patient. I had followed every instruction. I had sat in waiting rooms. I had filled out forms. I had listened to professionals explain my own child to me. And now my daughter, who hadn't said a single word in 3 years, was standing in front of me speaking like she'd done it her whole life. Mom. She said, her voice quiet but steady. Don't take those. My hand was still frozen in midair. 2 pills pressed into my palm. Lily, I said, and my voice sounded wrong to me. Too sharp, too thin. What did you say? She took 1 step forward, then another. Each step felt louder than the last. Don't take the vitamins Aunt Andrea gave you. I felt a cold pull behind my ribs like something tightening. Why, I asked. Her fingers twisted around the rabbit's ear. She looked past me, toward the front door, like she expected it to open again. She said I wasn't allowed to tell you, Lily said. But she left. There was no panic in her voice. No crying, just a statement. Like she was explaining a rule. Tell me what I said. She swallowed. I noticed then that her shoulders were tense, like she'd been holding herself still for a long time. She said if I talked, Lily continued, you would get in trouble, big trouble, and you wouldn't come home anymore. The words hit harder than the pills ever could have. I crouched down in front of her, ignoring the ache in my knees. Who said that, Aunt Andrea? I took a breath through my nose, slow and controlled. Years in uniform had taught me how to keep my face neutral, even when my mind was racing. Sweetheart, I said carefully. Why would she say something like that? Lily looked down at the floor. Her voice dropped, but it didn't disappear. She said the vitamins make you tired. And confused. She said that's good because your job doesn't like tired people. My heart started beating harder, not faster. Each thump felt deliberate. What else did she say, I asked. That if you kept taking them, Lily said you wouldn't be able to work anymore. And then someone else would have to take care of me. The kitchen felt too small all of a sudden. The air felt thick. I stood up and slid the bottle across the counter away from both of us. My hand was steady. I noticed that, filed it away. How long have you known this? I asked. Lily shrugged a small movement. A while. How long is a while? She thought about it. Really thought. Since you went to Texas last spring. That was 8 months ago. I ran through my schedule in my head. The training rotation, the weeks I'd been gone, the days Andrea had stayed over to help. And you didn't tell me, I said. Lily looked up at me then. Her eyes were dry, but there was something heavy in them. Something older than 8. She said if I talked, Lily repeated, you would disappear. Like Dad. The name hit me sideways. Your father didn't disappear, I said automatically. She shook her head. He did. He stopped calling. She said people leave when they cause problems. I closed my eyes for half a second. When I opened them, Lily was still there, still watching me, still waiting. I reached for her and pulled her into a hug. She was stiff at first, then slowly melted into me. Her face pressed against my shoulder. She smelled like shampoo and crayons. You didn't do anything wrong, I said. You hear me? She nodded once. I pulled back just enough to look at her face. Have you always been able to talk like this? Her mouth twitched. Yes, always, she nodded again. I just didn't. Why not? Because she was always there, Lily said. And because I didn't want you to get hurt. Something inside my chest cracked open, clean and sharp. I stood up with her still in my arms and carried her to the living room. I set her down on the couch and knelt in front of her again. Lily, I said, I need you to tell me everything you remember, not what you think it means. Just what you saw, what you heard. She took a breath, a real one. She talked on the phone a lot, Lily said. When you were gone, she would tell people you were tired, that you were struggling. She said the army doesn't like that. My jaw tightened. She also got mad when things went missing, Lily added. What things? The boxes, she said. The papers inside them. She kept them in her bag. When she forgot them, she yelled. What did you do with them? I asked. Lily hesitated. I didn't take everything, she said. Just the parts that made her scared. I glanced back toward the kitchen, toward the counter where the pills were still scattered. Show me, I said. Lily slid off the couch and walked toward her room without another word. I followed her down the hallway, my mind already shifting into a familiar mode. Not panic, not denial, assessment. The door to her room was half open. Sunlight spilled across the floor, illuminating toys, books, the ordinary mess of a child's life. Lily went straight to her desk, knelt down, and reached behind the bottom drawer. When she pulled her hand back, she wasn't holding a toy. She was holding folded paper. I took the papers from Lily's hand without unfolding them. Not yet. I didn't want my reaction to steer her words. Years of briefings had taught me that the order matters. Listen first, then look. Sit with me, I said. She climbed onto her bed legs, tucked under her rabbit back in her lap. I stayed standing for a moment, scanning the room the way I'd been trained to scan unfamiliar spaces. Nothing out of place, nothing dramatic. That bothered me more than clutter ever could. I sat on the edge of the bed. Start from the beginning, I said. Not the scary parts. Just the normal stuff. Lily nodded. When you were gone a lot. How often? I asked. Most weeks, she said. Sometimes you came home tired. Sometimes you didn't. That was fair. My job had a way of turning calendars into suggestions. I'd been proud of keeping things moving anyway. School drop-offs, handled dinners, prepped routines intact. When I couldn't be there, Andrea filled in. She always volunteered. Always said yes before I finished asking. Andrea liked being needed. She liked being the solution. When did she start staying overnight? I asked. Lily thought. After Christmas. When you had that long trip. I remembered it. 2 weeks. A logistics review that turned into a mess. Flights delayed. Phones buzzing at all hours. Andrea had offered to stay so Lily wouldn't be alone with a babysitter. It had sounded responsible, family-oriented, exactly the right thing to do. What did she do at night? I asked. She worked, Lily said. At the table, with her bag. What kind of work? Phone calls. Writing. She didn't want me to touch anything. I unfolded the first paper. It wasn't a document in the official sense. It was a printout. A web page. The header mentioned fatigue, focus, and operational readiness. Someone had highlighted lines in yellow. The margins were scribbled with notes in a familiar, tight handwriting. Andrea's. I kept my voice even. Did she ever talk about me? Lily nodded. She said you were burning out. I didn't react. She said your job pushes people until they break. Lily continued. She said it's better to step aside before someone gets hurt. I looked at the notes again. Dosage ranges, timing, words like cognitive load and sleep disruption. How did that make you feel? I asked. Lily shrugged. I didn't know. She said she was helping. Helping who? You, Lily said. And me. I set the paper down beside me and picked up the next one. A list this time. Supplements. Over-the-counter names I recognized from commercials and end cap displays. Nothing illegal, nothing that would raise eyebrows on its own. Together, though, they painted a different picture. When did she tell you not to talk? I asked. Lily's eyes dropped to her hands. She pressed her thumb into the rabbit's ear until it bent. When I said Mom one time, she said, I felt my jaw tighten. When was that after you left for Texas? Lily said, I called for you at night. She came in instead. What did she say? I asked. She told me people notice things, Lily said, that if I talked too much they'd start watching you, and when people watch you at work, bad things happen. I leaned back, letting my weight sink into the mattress. Did she yell? No, Lily said quickly. She smiled. That landed harder than shouting ever could have. She said if you had problems, Lily continued, they would take you away, like they take soldiers who can't do their jobs anymore. I'd spent enough time around command staff to know exactly how believable that would sound to a child. Even to an adult, honestly. Did she ever say anything about your dad? I asked. Lily hesitated, then nodded. She said he stopped coming around because you caused trouble by asking questions. That wasn't true, not even close. But Andrea had always had a way of rewriting events, just enough to make them fit her story. I looked at the third paper. This one was folded smaller, creased from being handled. It wasn't medical, it was legal. Guardianship language, contingencies, phrases like temporary incapacity, and best interest of the child. I didn't finish reading it. How did you get these? I asked. She left them out, Lily said. Sometimes she forgot. When she was mad. Mad about what? When she couldn't find things, Lily said. She tore up her bag once. She blamed you. I pictured it. Andrea's frustration contained but sharp. The way she went quiet when plans slipped. Why did you keep them? I asked. Lily looked up at me. Because she got scared. When I moved them, Lily said. She smiled less. She watched me more. I let out a slow breath. Did she ever hurt you? Lily shook her head. No, she just watched. That mattered. Control without bruises was still control, but it changed the shape of what came next. I stood and walked to the window. The street outside was normal. Neighbors' cars, a jogger passing by, life uninterrupted. I need to ask you something important, I said, turning back. Have you been pretending not to talk this whole time? Lily nodded. Yes. Why? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Because she was always there, Lily said. And because when she wasn't, I didn't know if she could hear me anyway. I crouched in front of her again. You don't have to pretend anymore, I said. Not with me. She searched my face. Promise I don't make promises I can't keep, I said. But I will protect you. She nodded once. That was enough for her. I gathered the papers and slid them back into the drawer where Lily had hidden them. Not because I wanted them out of sight, but because I didn't want Andrea noticing they were gone yet. The timing mattered. Can you stay here for a bit? I asked Lily. She climbed back onto the bed. Okay. I walked back to the kitchen and picked up the pills from the counter. I didn't put them back in the bottle. I set them aside, away from the sink, away from the trash. Then I pulled my phone out and scrolled through my calendar. Flights, meetings, medical check-ins I'd postponed because I felt fine. I stared at the bottle one more time before screwing the cap on and sliding it into a drawer. I wasn't angry yet. Anger would come later. Right now I was doing math. How long Andrea had access, how often she'd stayed over, how many times I'd taken something without thinking twice because it came from family. I glanced down the hallway toward Lily's room. The door was still open, light spilling out. Family had never been my blind spot at work. Apparently it had been at home. I washed my hands, dried them, and picked up my keys, not to leave, just to feel the weight of them again. The habit grounded me. By the time my phone buzzed with a message from Andrea, just a smiley face and a call me when you can. I already knew one thing for sure. I wasn't confronting her, not yet. I sat at the kitchen table with the papers spread out in front of me, not reading so much as listening to the house. Pipes ticking, the refrigerator humming, normal sounds that suddenly felt like cover noise for something else. I folded the pages back into a neat stack and slid them into my bag, the same one I took to work every day. Familiar weight, familiar place. Lily padded into the kitchen a few minutes later and climbed into the chair across from me. She didn't ask permission. She didn't need to. Can I have juice? She asked. The request hit me harder than the confession had. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was so ordinary. I poured her apple juice and set it in front of her, watching her hands as she wrapped them around the glass. Steady, careful, like she'd learned to make herself small. You said you stopped talking because she was always there, I said. Was there ever a time she wasn't? Lily shook her head. She came even when you were home. She said she was checking on us. That tracked. Andrea had always found reasons to drop by. A forgotten jacket. Leftovers she didn't want to waste. Advice I hadn't asked for. What did she say when you didn't answer people I asked? That it was good, Lily said. She said quiet kids don't get in trouble. I nodded slowly. Did you want to talk? Lily shrugged, then frowned. Sometimes, but then I thought about you. That tight feeling returned right under my sternum. Did she practice with you? I asked. Tell you what to do. Lily hesitated. She told me to look at the floor, to hold my breath a little, to pretend my throat felt stuck. I closed my eyes for a second. The image formed too easily. Did anyone else notice? I asked. My teacher asked. Lily said. Andrea talked to her. What did she say? That I was sensitive, Lily said. That pushing would make it worse. Of course she did. Did the doctor ever ask you questions? I asked. Lily nodded. Andrea answered for me. That explained more than I liked. I took a sip of my coffee and immediately pushed it away. The smell alone made my stomach turn. When you heard her on the phone, I said, what did she say exactly? Lily thought for a moment. She said you were unreliable. The word stung sharp and professional. The kind that shows up in reports. She said people like that shouldn't be in charge, Lily continued. She said they make mistakes. I leaned back in my chair. Did she ever say what would happen to you? Lily nodded. She said I'd be safer. Safer with who? With her. Lily said like it was obvious. I let that sit. Did she ever say she hated me? I asked. Lily shook her head. No, she said she felt sorry for you. That was worse. I stood up and paced the length of the kitchen, hands clasped behind my back. It wasn't anger yet. It was clarity, pieces sliding into place with an uncomfortable click. Lily, I said, stopping in front of her. I need to know something. Did she ever tell you what was in the vitamins? Lily shook her head. No, she just said they help soldiers sleep. That part was smart, plausible. I'd heard the same pitch from people who didn't know my job, and from a few who did. When did you start noticing I was tired? I asked. Lily's eyes lifted to mine. After a while, she said, You forgot things. I swallowed. Like what? You missed pickup once, Lily said. And you asked me the same question twice. I winced. I remembered that day. I'd blamed the schedule, the stress, everything except the bottle sitting on my counter. Did I scare you? I asked. No, Lily said quickly. Just different, I nodded. That word fit too well. I pulled my chair closer to hers and lowered my voice, even though we were alone. Listen to me, I said. You didn't do anything wrong. Not talking, not listening to her. None of it. Lily looked down at her juice. I thought if I stayed quiet, you'd be safe. The weight of that thought settled on me slowly like pressure. You shouldn't have had to think like that, I said. She didn't argue. She just nodded. I stood again and opened the drawer where I'd put the bottle. I held it up between us. Did she ever watch me take these? I asked. Lily nodded. She reminded you. I turned the bottle over in my hand. The label was clean, the seal intact. Nothing screamed danger. How did you know not to trust them? I asked. Lily shrugged. She didn't want me to touch them. That was enough. I set the bottle down and slid it farther into the drawer, then closed it. Out of sight but not forgotten. Do you feel okay now? I asked. Lily nodded. I think so. Any headaches? I asked. Trouble sleeping? She shook her head. Just bad dreams. About what? She takes you away? Lily said simply. I exhaled slowly. That's not happening. She looked at me like she was checking for cracks. You're sure? I met her gaze and held it. Yes. She nodded again. That was her version of trust. I walked her back to her room and tucked her in, even though it wasn't bedtime. She curled onto her side, rabbit tucked under her chin. Can you leave the door open? She asked. I was going to, I said. She watched me as I turned off the light, then said something that made me stop in the doorway. She didn't know I could read. I turned back. What the papers? Lily said. She thought I didn't understand. That explained how the stack had grown. Did you read all of them? I asked. Lily shook her head. Just the words she underlined. I nodded slowly. That tracked too. I stepped into the hallway and leaned against the wall, my pulse finally catching up with me. I pressed my fingers to my temple and waited for the familiar fog to roll in. It didn't. I walked back to the kitchen and pulled my laptop out of my bag. I didn't open the documents Lily had found. Not yet. I searched instead for my medical records, the ones I'd skimmed and forgotten. Sleep notes. Fatigue complaints I'd dismissed. Patterns emerged when you looked long enough. My phone buzzed again. Andrea. Everything okay, the message read. Just checking. I stared at the screen for a moment, then set the phone face down on the table. I wasn't ready to answer, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly how she'd hear it. I poured the coffee down the sink, rinsed the mug, and watched the water swirl until it disappeared. When I went back to Lily's room, she was already asleep, breathing evenly, the rabbit tucked tight against her chest. I stood there longer than I needed to, listening. The house felt quieter now, not empty, just alert. I woke up before my alarm the way I always did when something was off. Not wide awake, just aware. The house was still dark, the quiet steady instead of heavy. I lay there for a moment, checking myself the way I'd learned to do after long operations. Head clear, hands steady, no ringing in my ears. I swung my legs out of bed and stood up slowly. No dizziness, no lag. That alone was enough to make me pause. In the kitchen, the bottle was exactly where I'd left it, tucked into the back of the drawer. I didn't take it out. I didn't need to. Just knowing it was there was information. I made coffee and stopped halfway through pouring it. The smell turned my stomach. That had been happening more often lately. I'd blamed stress, travel, anything convenient. I pushed the mug aside and grabbed a glass of water instead. Lily came out of her room a few minutes later, rubbing her eyes. She didn't speak right away. She watched me. That was new. Or maybe I was just noticing it now. Morning, I said. Morning, she replied, quiet but clear. I nodded like this was normal, like my daughter had always talked to me over breakfast. She climbed onto the chair and swung her legs. You didn't take them, she said, nodding toward the drawer. No, I said. I didn't. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. A release so small I might have missed it if I wasn't looking for it. Do you feel different? She asked. I considered it. I feel less foggy. She nodded like that matched her data. After I dropped her at school, I sat in the car for a minute longer than necessary. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder I'd set months ago and forgotten. Routine check-in, the kind you reschedule when nothing feels urgent. I didn't reschedule it. At work, I moved through the morning on autopilot, but with my attention dialed up. Meetings felt sharper. I caught details I'd missed last week. Someone cracked a joke about my new energy, and I smiled without answering. By mid-morning, I knew enough to stop guessing. I pulled my medical file during lunch, the one I'd never bothered to read line by line. Sleep disruptions, cognitive fatigue. Mild confusion noted twice by different providers. Nothing alarming, nothing conclusive. All of it had started after Christmas. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, replaying the timeline. Andrea staying over, the bottle appearing on the counter, her reminders, her comments about how tired I looked. It wasn't poison in the movie sense. It didn't need to be. It just needed to nudge things in the wrong direction long enough for someone else to step in. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. I needed the quiet. Lily was at the table doing homework when I walked in. She looked up and smiled a quick thing, then went back to her worksheet. You eat, I asked. Snack, she said. I saved you one. She slid a granola bar across the table. No vitamins, no pills, just food. Thanks, I said. I sat down across from her. I need to ask you something, I said. When Aunt Andrea talked about my job, did she ever say who she talked to? Lily shook her head. She said people. That's vague, I said. She liked vague, Lily said. That tracked too. Did she ever tell you to hide things, I asked. Only the papers, Lily said. She said they were private. And the vitamins, I asked. She said those were grown-up stuff, Lily replied. Not for kids. I nodded. Okay, I didn't push. I didn't need more from her right now. She'd already given me enough. After dinner, I did something small but deliberate. I took the bottle out of the drawer and put it back on the counter, not to use, just to see what would happen. Andrea called an hour later. Hey, she said, bright and casual. Just wanted to check in. You sounded tired yesterday. I'm fine, I said. There was a pause. Short, controlled. Did you take the supplements, she asked. Not today, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. Oh, she said. Why not? I forgot, I replied. That's not like you, she said. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. People forget things. She laughed a light sound. You should really stay consistent. That's important. I'll keep that in mind, I said. She changed the subject after that. Asked about Lily's school, about my schedule, about when I was leaving again. I answered enough to sound normal and not enough to be useful. When I hung up, I didn't feel relieved. I felt confirmed. I moved the bottle back into the drawer and left it there. That night, I slept through without waking once. No dreams, no jolts. When my alarm went off, I turned it off with one hand and sat up without that familiar delay. At breakfast, Lily watched me again. "You're faster," she said. "Am I?" I asked. She nodded. "Yesterday you stared at the fridge." I snorted. "That sounds like me." She smiled. "Not like this." I dropped her off and drove straight to the base hospital. I didn't announce myself. I didn't explain anything dramatic. I asked for labs, routine, full panel. The nurse didn't blink. She'd seen everything. When the blood draw was done, I sat in my car again and stared at my hands, still steady. On the way home, I stopped at the pharmacy. I didn't buy anything. I walked the aisles reading labels, checking combinations. The things Andrea had chosen weren't random. They were common, recommended. And together they could absolutely mess with someone's focus if taken daily. Back home, I laid the papers Lily had hidden out on the table and finally read them all the way through, not rushing, not jumping to conclusions. There was a pattern, not perfect, not airtight, but intentional. Lily came in and leaned against the counter. "Are you mad?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'm thinking." She nodded. "That's good." "It is," I agreed. I gathered the papers back into a neat stack and slid them into my bag again. Same place. Same weight. I wasn't confronting Andrea. Not now. Not like this. I needed data. I needed documentation. And I needed her to keep believing that nothing had changed. I checked my phone once more. No new messages. The house felt steady, not calm, ready. I poured myself another glass of water, drank it, and wiped my hands on a towel. Then I opened my calendar and confirmed my appointment for the next morning. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. I'd sat in worse places, but this one had a way of making time stretch. A muted TV played a morning show no one was watching. I focused on the rhythm of my breathing and the weight of my boots on the floor. When the nurse called my name, I stood without that familiar half-second delay. Another data point. Blood work was quick, efficient. The nurse asked the usual questions. Any changes in sleep, appetite, focus? I answered honestly and kept it short. No speeches, no theories. "Doctor will review and call you," she said, already turning to the next chart. Back in my car, I checked my phone. A message from Andrea waited there, time-stamped an hour earlier. "Did you remember your vitamins today?" I didn't respond. At home, Lily was still at school, so the house had that hollow quiet that made thoughts echo. I laid the papers out again, this time grouping them. Product names, dosages, timing notes. It wasn't elegant. It didn't need to be. It was consistent. I opened my laptop and searched the interactions between the supplements Andrea had chosen. Nothing dramatic popped up. No skull icons, just clinical language about cumulative effects, sensitivity, and impaired attention in certain populations. Certain populations like people under sustained stress, people like soldiers. My phone rang mid-afternoon. Unknown number. Base hospital. Captain Bennett, the voice said. "This is Dr. Reeves." I recognized the name. Internal medicine. Straight shooter. Not a fan of drama. "Go ahead," I said. "There are some irregularities in your labs," he said. No alarm, no reassurance, just fact. "Irregular how?" I asked. "Nothing acute," he said. "But your levels indicate you've been taking multiple supplements that shouldn't be combined daily. In your line of work, that matters." I closed my eyes for a beat. "What kind of impact?" "Sleep disruption. Slowed reaction time. Cognitive fog," he said. "Nothing that looks dangerous on paper, but enough to raise concerns about fitness if it continued." If I repeated. "Yes," he said. "If." "Could it explain recent notes in my file?" I asked. There was a pause. "It aligns," he said carefully. "Do you see this often?" I asked. "With service members," he said. "More than we should." I pictured Andrea's careful smile, her practiced concern. "What do you recommend?" I asked. "Stop taking everything that isn't prescribed," he said. "Which I assume you've already done." "I have," I said. "Good," he replied. "We'll retest in a week. In the meantime, I'm noting this as a reversible issue, not a condition. That distinction mattered." "Thank you," I said. When the call ended, I didn't feel relief. I felt confirmation solid and heavy. Lily burst through the front door an hour later, backpack sliding off one shoulder. "You're home," she said. "I am," I replied. She stopped short when she saw my face. "Is it bad?" "No," I said. "It's clear," she nodded like clarity was something she could measure. I made dinner without checking any labels. Real food. Simple. Lily talked about school, about a girl who borrowed her markers and didn't return them. Normal problems. The kind I wanted to protect. Afterward, I took the trash out and paused at the curb, the bag heavy in my hands. The bottle was still inside the house. I wasn't throwing it away. Not yet. Andrea called again that evening. I let it ring twice before answering. "You sound better," she said immediately. "I feel better," I replied. "That's good," she said. I was worried. "I know," I said. Silence stretched between us. She filled it quickly. "You really should stick to the routine," Andrea said. "Consistency matters, especially for someone with your responsibilities." "I spoke to a doctor," I said. Another pause. Longer this time. "Oh," she said. "About what?" "About supplements," I replied. "Interactions." She laughed softly. "Doctors worry too much." Sometimes I agreed. "Are you stopping them?" she asked. "For now," I said. Her exhale wasn't subtle. "That's not ideal." "Why?" I asked. She caught herself. "Because your job is demanding. You need support." "I have support," I said. "From who?" she asked. "Myself," I said. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her tone had shifted. Sharper. "You don't have to push everyone away." "I'm not," I said. "I'm just paying attention." That ended the call. Later that night, Lily sat cross-legged on the couch coloring. She glanced up at me. "She's mad," she said. "Why do you think that?" I asked. "She talks faster when she's mad," Lily said. "And she says your name more." I smiled despite myself. "That's good noticing." She shrugged. "I've had practice." I reached for the remote and turned the TV on low. Not because we needed noise, but because I wanted the house to sound lived in. "Can I ask you something?" Lily said. "Always," I replied. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. "For what?" I asked. "For talking," she said. "No," I said immediately. "You did exactly what you were supposed to do." She studied my face. "Even if it makes things harder, I didn't lie." "It might make some things harder. It makes other things safer." She nodded. "I like safer." "So do I," I said. After she went to bed, I sat at the table again with my laptop and started documenting. Dates, times, messages, calls. I didn't speculate. I didn't accuse. I wrote what could be proven: the doctor's call, the lab results, the messages from Andrea asking about vitamins, the change in my symptoms after stopping. I attached photos of the papers Lily had saved. Not everything, just enough. I saved the file twice, once locally, once encrypted. My phone buzzed again. Andrea, one more time. "You didn't answer me earlier. Are you okay?" I typed a reply, then deleted it. I needed her calm. Curious, not cornered. "Busy day. I'll call tomorrow," I wrote instead. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "Okay, just don't forget what I told you," she replied. I set the phone face down and leaned back in my chair. I wasn't forgetting anything. In fact, for the first time in months, everything felt sharp. I closed my laptop and stood stretching my shoulders. Tomorrow would be another normal day. School drop-off, work, dinners, calls, normal was exactly what I needed right now. I walked down the hall and checked on Lily. She slept on her side, one arm thrown over the rabbit, breathing slow and even. I turned the hall light off and stood there for a second, listening to the quiet. It didn't feel empty anymore. It felt focused. I woke up with a plan already forming, not because I decided anything dramatic, but because my body recognized the pattern. When something threatens your perimeter, you don't rush it. You observe. You control variables. You let the other side think the field is stable. At breakfast, I moved slower on purpose. Not clumsy, just distracted enough to look believable. I asked Lily where her shoes were, even though they were right by the door. She noticed. Of course she did. "You okay?" she asked. "Just tired," I said. She nodded, but her eyes stayed on me a second longer than usual. Smart kid. On the drive to school, I missed a turn I'd never missed before. Not by accident. I corrected it calmly and kept going. Lily didn't say anything, but she wrote it down in her head. That was fine. We were both collecting data now. At work, I shifted gears. I stopped volunteering for extra tasks. I asked for clarifications I normally wouldn't need. I made a small mistake in a spreadsheet and corrected it immediately after it was noticed. Enough to be seen, not enough to raise alarms. Someone joked that I needed a vacation. I laughed and didn't disagree. By mid-morning, I'd already received 2 texts from Andrea. "You seem off today." "Did you sleep?" I waited before replying. "Long night," I typed. The response came back faster than usual. That's why the routine matters. I stared at the screen for a moment, then set the phone down without answering. I wanted her to feel helpful, not shut out. At lunch, I made a call I'd been putting off. Daniel Cross answered on the second ring. "You don't call unless you're serious," he said. "That hasn't changed," I replied. Daniel was a JAG officer I'd worked with years ago. We'd crossed paths during an internal review that never made the news. He didn't scare easily. "I have a question," I said. "Hypothetical." "That's my favorite kind," he replied. "If I record a conversation I'm part of," I said, "is that admissible?" He didn't answer right away. "Depends on the state." "Ohio," I said. "One-party consent," he replied. "As long as you're in the conversation, it's legal." "And within a family?" I asked. "Doesn't matter," he said. "Consent is consent." "Why, I'll explain later," I said. "Anything I should avoid, don't provoke," he said. "Let people talk," I smiled. "That won't be a problem." After the call, I ordered a small digital recorder online. Nothing fancy, no blinking lights, no apps. Just a device that did one thing well. At home, Lily was on the floor coloring when I walked in. She looked up. "You're quieter today," she said. "That's on purpose," I replied. She nodded once. "Okay." I sat across from her and lowered my voice. "I need you to do something for me." She straightened. "What I need you to keep doing what you've been doing," I said. "Watching. Listening, but I don't want you to be scared." She thought about that. "I'm not scared," she said. "I just don't like lying." "I know," I said. "Neither do I." "Is it lying?" she asked. "If you don't tell someone everything I considered it?" "Sometimes it's just strategy." She accepted that without argument. Another data point. Andrea came by that evening without calling first. I was ready for that too. I left the bottle on the counter exactly where she'd put it last time. Her eyes went straight to it when she walked in. "Good," she said, nodding toward the pills. "You remembered." I rubbed my temple. "Barely," she smiled and set her purse down. "That's okay. That's why I remind you." She glanced at Lily. "Homework done?" "Yes," Lily said. Andrea reached out and touched Lily's shoulder. Lily didn't flinch, but she didn't lean in either. "You seem quiet today," Andrea said. Lily shrugged. "I'm tired." Andrea looked at me. "See?" I nodded. "Kids." We talked about nothing important. Weather, school, my schedule. I let myself trail off once or twice mid-sentence. Andrea filled the gaps easily. Too easily. "You should really consider stepping back a little," she said casually. "Your job takes a toll." "I've handled it so far," I replied. "Barely," she said, laughing. I didn't laugh back. Later, after she left, Lily followed me into the kitchen. "She thinks it's working," she said. "So do I replied. The recorder arrived the next afternoon. I tested it at the table, then behind a stack of books on the living room shelf. Clear sound, no distortion, simple. I showed Lily how it worked without making it a big deal. "You don't have to touch this unless I ask," I said. She nodded. "Okay." That night, I sent Andrea a message. "Feeling worse today, head's foggy, might need help soon." The response was immediate. "I told you, you need to be consistent. I can come by tomorrow." I stared at the screen, then typed back. That would help. I slept lightly, not because I was anxious, but because my brain was running checklists. Placement, timing, tone, what not to say. In the morning, I skipped breakfast entirely and let myself look pale in the mirror. I buttoned my shirt wrong the first time, then left it that way. Lily noticed. "You did that wrong," she said. "I know," I replied. "Leave it." She nodded, understanding more than I liked. Andrea arrived mid-morning. She took one look at me and smiled the way people do when they think they're right. "There you are," she said. "You don't look good." I sighed and sank into the chair. "I don't feel great." She set her bag down and moved toward the counter. "Did you take them today?" "I think so," I said. "I can't remember." Her eyes lit up just a fraction. "That's okay," she said. "I'll make sure you do." She sat across from me and started talking. About options, about rest, about responsibility, about what happens when people can't keep up. I nodded at the right moments, missed others on purpose. Behind me, the recorder stayed quiet and patient, doing exactly what it was designed to do. Andrea leaned forward, her voice dropping. You don't have to be the strong one all the time, she said. Someone has to step in. I rubbed my face with both hands and let them shake just enough to be noticeable. She took that as an invitation. And she kept talking. Andrea settled into the chair like she owned it, not relaxed, confident. There's a difference. Relaxed people lean back. Confident people lean in. You didn't eat, she said, glancing at the empty plate. I wasn't hungry, I replied. That's not good, she said. Skipping meals makes everything worse. I nodded, slow, unfocused. I forget sometimes. She smiled. I know. She reached for the bottle on the counter and twisted the cap open without asking. The sound clicked through the room, sharp and small. She shook 2 pills into her palm and slid them across the table. Take these now, she said. With water. I stared at them like they were unfamiliar objects. Are you sure? Andrea's smile tightened. Of course I'm sure. I wouldn't give you anything unsafe. I picked one up, rolled it between my fingers, then set it back down. I just feel off. That's exactly why, she said. Your body's adjusting to what I asked. She hesitated just a beat. To slowing down, I rubbed my forehead. My job doesn't really allow that. She leaned closer. That's the problem. Behind me, the recorder stayed hidden steady. Lily sat on the floor by the couch, coloring quietly, exactly where Andrea expected her to be. Invisible, silent, useful in all the wrong ways. You've been pushing yourself for years. Andrea continued. No one would blame you for needing help. I don't like needing help, I said. You don't have to like it, she replied. You just have to accept it. I picked up the glass of water, took a small sip, then set it down untouched. What happens if I don't? She laughed softly. You get worse. Worse how I asked. She waved a hand, more tired, more confused. You forget things. It happens. I already forget things, I said. She nodded eagerly. Exactly. I looked past her for a second, letting my eyes drift, then brought them back. Is that why you keep checking on me? Andrea didn't miss a beat. Of course. I'm worried. About me, I asked. And Lily, she said. Kids need stability. My jaw clenched, but I let it go. You think I'm unstable, I said. She sighed, the practiced sound of patience. I think you're overwhelmed. That's not the same thing, I said. It is when people start noticing, she replied. Who's noticing? I asked. She smiled again, slower this time. People who matter. I leaned back in my chair and let my shoulders slump. I don't want to lose my job. Her eyes flicked to mine. Then you need to be honest about what you can handle. I laughed, once short and humorless. Honest with who? With yourself, she said. And with the right people. She glanced toward Lily, then back to me. If something happened, she'd need someone reliable. There it was, not loud, not dramatic, just placed gently on the table like a suggestion. You think I can't take care of my own kid, I said. I think you're struggling, Andrea replied. And pretending otherwise doesn't help anyone. I looked down at my hands and let them shake again, just enough. What are you saying? I'm saying. She said carefully that sometimes stepping back is the responsible choice. And you'd step in, I said. If needed, she said quickly. Of course. I nodded slowly like I was processing something complicated. You've thought about this. Andrea shrugged. I worry. How long? I asked. She hesitated. Not long, just long enough. A while, she said. How long is a while? I pressed. She smiled and shook her head. You're overthinking. I leaned forward and lowered my voice. Am I? She held my gaze. Yes. I let out a breath and sank back again. I don't feel like myself. That's because you haven't been taking care of yourself, she said, tapping the pills. Take them, it'll help. I picked one up and pretended to swallow it, tilting my head back and chasing it with water. I let it sit in my cheek, then dropped it into my sleeve when Andrea looked away. She watched me closely, then relaxed. Good, she said. That's a start. She stood and paced the kitchen, talking as she moved. About paperwork, about evaluations, about how these things escalate if you don't address them early. You don't want this getting formal, she said. That never ends well. I don't want anyone making decisions for me, I said. She stopped pacing. Then let me help you make the right ones. What if I don't agree with you? I asked. She frowned just slightly. You will. Lily looked up from her coloring. Aunt Andrea. Andrea turned, her smile snapping back into place. Yes, sweetheart. Why do you want Mom to be tired? Lily asked. The room went still. Andrea laughed quick and light. I don't, that's silly, Lily tilted her head. Then why do you give her things that make her forget? Andrea's eyes flicked to me sharp. Lily, she said, we don't talk about grown-up stuff. It's okay, I said quietly. Andrea's smile thinned. She doesn't understand. I understand enough, Lily said, calm as ever. Andrea straightened. You're confusing her. No, I said. I think she's been confused for a while. Andrea crossed her arms. You're not thinking clearly. I rubbed my face again longer this time. That's what you keep saying. Because it's true, she snapped, then caught herself. I'm just trying to protect you. From what I asked. She exhaled sharply. From ruining everything. Everything, I repeated. Yes, she said. Your career, your reputation, your kid's future. I let the silence hang there. I didn't fill it. Andrea did. You're not cut out for this pace anymore, she said. You never were. That one stung, but I didn't show it. Then why wait until now, I asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Because you wouldn't listen before, I nodded slowly. So you made me listen. Her eyes widened a fraction. That's not... You said consistency mattered, I interrupted. You said people notice. You said stepping in was responsible. She stared at me, her confidence flickering. You're twisting my words. Am I asked. She glanced at the counter, at the bottle, at Lily on the floor. Her voice dropped. You wouldn't have lasted another year. The words hung there heavy and quiet. I leaned back and let my head rest against the chair. I'm so tired, I said. Andrea stepped closer. I know. Behind her, the recorder kept running. Not reacting, not judging, just listening. Andrea reached out and placed her hand on my shoulder. Let me handle things for a while, she said. You can rest. I closed my eyes and nodded. She smiled, and she kept talking. Andrea's hand stayed on my shoulder a second longer than necessary, like she was grounding herself instead of me. I let my head hang forward. Eyes half-lidded, the picture of someone who needed guidance. She withdrew her hand slowly and exhaled, satisfied. I'll make some tea, she said. You look like you need to sit still. Tea sounds good, I murmured. She moved toward the kitchen, back turned. I opened my eyes just enough to catch Lily's gaze. She was still on the floor, coloring her face calm, in a way that didn't match the moment. I lifted one finger, subtle. Wait, Andrea's voice drifted from the counter. You know, I've already looked into a few options, she said casually. Nothing official, just information. Options, I echoed. For support, she said. In case things don't improve. She returned with a mug and set it in front of me. Steam curled up, sharp and herbal. I didn't touch it. What kind of support, I asked. She pulled out the chair across from me and sat down. There are programs, she said. Medical evaluations. Temporary relief from duty. It happens all the time. I'd have a say, I said. She smiled, patient again. Of course. But when someone's not well, other people sometimes have to speak for them. I nodded slowly. You've thought this through. She hesitated, then shrugged. I had to. I picked up the mug, brought it halfway to my mouth, then stopped. What if I don't agree? Andrea's eyes hardened for just a flash. Then you're not thinking clearly. Behind her, Lily stood up. The chair scraped softly against the floor. Andrea didn't notice at first. She was too focused on me. You can't keep pretending you're fine, Andrea said. It's irresponsible. Lily took one step forward. Then another. I'm not pretending, I said quietly. Andrea laughed once sharp. You don't even know what day it is half the time. That's not true, I said. Really? She shot back. What day is it? I opened my mouth, then closed it again, letting uncertainty sit there. Andrea leaned back, triumphant. See, Mom. The word cut through the room like something snapping. Andrea froze. Slowly she turned toward Lily. What did you say? She asked. I said Mom, Lily repeated. Her voice was clear, not loud, not shaky, just present. Andrea stared at her like she was seeing a stranger. You don't talk, she said automatically. I do, Lily replied. I always have. Andrea laughed, but it came out wrong. That's not funny. It's not a joke, Lily said. Andrea looked at me. What is this? I straightened in my chair and set the mug down untouched. It's the truth. Andrea stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. You coached her. No, I said. You silenced her. Andrea shook her head hard. She's confused. Lily stepped closer. You told me not to talk, she said. You said Mom would disappear. Andrea's mouth opened then closed. I was protecting you from what Lily asked. Andrea's eyes flicked to me. From her. That's enough, I said. Andrea rounded on me. You think this changes anything? I think it explains everything, I replied. She laughed again, louder this time. You're not well. This is exactly what I was talking about. That recording behind you disagrees, I said. She spun around, scanning the shelf. Her face drained of color when she spotted the small device tucked between the books. What is that? She demanded. A recorder, I said. It's been running since you sat down. Andrea's breath hitched. That's illegal. One-party consent, I replied. I checked. She took a step toward the shelf. I stood up and blocked her path without touching her. Don't, I said. Lily moved to my side and grabbed my sleeve. Andrea looked between us, her expression shifting rapidly. Fear, anger, calculation. You can't use that, she said. I was trying to help. You talked about evaluations, I said. About speaking for me? About stepping in, she scoffed. Because you're not capable right now. I was capable enough to stop taking what you gave me, I said. Her jaw clenched. That was your mistake. The room went quiet. Lily squeezed my sleeve. You said she wouldn't last, she said, looking at Andrea. You said it like it was a plan. Andrea's eyes snapped to Lily. You don't understand adult conversations. I understand when someone wants my mom gone, Lily said. Andrea turned on me, voice rising. You put this in her head. No, I said. You did. For years. She took a step back, then another. You're twisting things. Then explain them, I said. Explain the supplements, the timing, the paperwork you left lying around. Her eyes darted to the bag by the door. You went through my things, she said. I didn't, I replied. Your niece did. Andrea laughed brittle. She's 8, and she's been watching you longer than I have, I said. Andrea's face twisted with frustration. You think anyone will believe this? I already spoke to a doctor, I said. And a lawyer. Her confidence cracked. You went behind my back? Yes, I said. The way you went behind mine. She took a sharp breath. You would have ruined yourself anyway, I tilted my head. That sounds rehearsed, she snapped. You were weak. Lily flinched. I felt it in my arm. Andrea pointed at me. You couldn't keep up. You never could. I just helped things along. The words hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. I didn't raise my voice. Say that again. Andrea realized what she'd said a second too late. I didn't mean, you helped things along, I repeated. That's what you said. She backed toward the door. This is out of context. I have hours of context, I said. She lunged, then not at me but toward Lily. I moved without thinking, one step, one hand on Andrea's wrist, stopping her mid-reach. Not hard, just firm. Don't touch her, I said. Andrea struggled, eyes wild. Let go. Sit down, I said. She didn't. Lily's grip tightened on my sleeve. I'm calling the police, Andrea shouted. I already did, I replied. She froze. What? Not for this moment, I said. For the whole picture. Sirens weren't close yet, but the air had shifted. Andrea knew it. She stopped fighting and sagged back into the chair. Lily stepped in front of me, her voice steady. You told me silence keeps people safe, she said. You lied. Andrea stared at her, then laughed softly. You think you won? I didn't answer. The recorder kept running, and for the first time since this began, Andrea stopped talking. Andrea sat rigid in the chair, hands clenched in her lap, eyes darting like she was still looking for an angle. I stayed between her and Lily, not touching her now, just close enough to make the boundary clear. Lily didn't hide behind me. She stood at my side, shoulders squared, watching her aunt, the way she'd watched her for years. You really think this ends well for you, Andrea said, breaking the silence. Her voice was lower now, controlled again. You've overreacted. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The recorder was still running and Andrea hated silence more than confrontation. She exhaled sharply. You know what happens to people who make accusations like this? Go on, I said. They lose credibility, she replied. Careers don't survive scandals, especially not in your line of work. That sounds like experience talking, I said. She scoffed. You think you're the first one who couldn't keep up? Lily shifted beside me. You said she was failing, she said. You said they'd replace her. Andrea snapped her head toward Lily. I was talking about possibilities. You said it was better if she stepped aside, Lily continued. You said people like her don't get second chances. Andrea's jaw tightened. I said people get hurt when they refuse help. Help, I repeated. That's what you call it. She stood up again slower this time. I stepped in because someone had to. No, I said. You stepped in because you wanted control. She laughed sharp and bitter. Control. You think I wanted your life? I think you wanted the part where I wasn't in the way, I said. Her eyes flashed. You were never around. That's convenient, I said. Because you were. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Her gaze flicked to the shelf, to the recorder, to Lily. You really trained her well, she said. I didn't train her, I replied. I finally listened. Andrea shook her head. You're turning this into something it's not. Then correct the record, I said. Explain the supplements. Explain why you tracked when I took them. Explain why you kept paperwork about evaluations and guardianship. Her lips pressed together. You went through my bag. Again, I said your niece did. Andrea stared at Lily. You stole from me. I saved my mom, Lily said calmly. Andrea's laugh cracked. You don't even know what that means. I know you wanted her tired, Lily replied. You wanted her to forget. Andrea turned to me, frustration spilling over. She's repeating things you said. No, I said. She's repeating things you did. Andrea paced the room, hands tugging at her hair. You don't understand what it's like to watch someone self-destruct. I understand exactly what it's like to be undermined, I said. She spun on me. You would have lost everything anyway. The words came out too fast, too loud. Lily stiffened. What do you mean by that, I asked. Andrea froze, realizing she'd gone too far. I mean, with the stress, the pace, you were slipping where I asked. She hesitated, mentally. That's a big claim, I said. Based on what? You forgot things, she snapped. You missed appointments. After you introduced a daily routine I never asked for, I said. She shook her head. You're twisting this. Then untwist it, I said. Andrea's shoulders sagged. You don't know how hard it was to watch what I pressed. She looked away. You getting praise for holding it together. There it was, for doing my job, I asked. Forgetting everything, she snapped. The career, the respect, the sympathy. Lily looked between us. She was jealous, she said, more statement than question. Andrea rounded on her. This isn't about you, it always was, Lily said. You said if Mom stopped working, I'd belong to you. Andrea's face went pale. I never said that. You said you'd take care of me when she couldn't, Lily replied. You said it like you were waiting. Andrea laughed weakly. Kids misunderstand. Then explain why you kept papers about me, Lily said, with my name on them. Andrea's breath caught. You don't understand what those were. Then tell us, I said. She looked at me, eyes hard. You were going to burn out. I just sped things up. The room went still. Lily's hand tightened in mine. You sped things up, I repeated. Andrea's voice rose defensive. You needed a push. You wouldn't stop otherwise. And if I hadn't, I asked. She shrugged. The system would have taken care of it. That system, I said, would have taken my daughter too. Andrea said nothing. The sound of distant sirens cut through the silence. Not loud yet. Not close. Just enough to register. Andrea looked toward the window. You called them, I said I did, I replied. She laughed again, but there was panic underneath it now. You think they'll believe you? They'll believe the labs, I said. And the messages. And the recordings, she scoffed. Recordings can be manipulated. Not easily, I said. She turned to Lily. You didn't have to do this. Lily met her gaze. You didn't have to make me quiet. Andrea's face twisted. You were a means to an end. I felt the shift immediately. The moment where something snapped into focus. A means to what end, I asked. She closed her eyes, then opened them. A stable future. For who, I asked. For both of us, she said, then corrected herself. For me. The sirens grew louder. Andrea sank back into the chair. You always were the favorite, she muttered. I didn't rise to it. I was the one who showed up. You weren't there, she shot back. I was there enough, I said. You were just louder. She looked at Lily one last time. You could have stayed safe. Lily didn't flinch. I am safe. The knock at the door came then. Firm, professional. Andrea straightened her jacket like she could still salvage dignity. I didn't move to open the door right away. I reached behind me and picked up the recorder, holding it where Andrea could see it. This is what you never expected, I said. That the quiet one was listening. The knock came again. I opened the door. 2 officers stood on the porch, calm, alert. I identified myself. I didn't dramatize. I stated facts. Andrea started talking immediately, overlapping, explaining, reframing. The officers listened neutral. Lily stood close to me, her hand steady in mine. As Andrea's words piled up, they began to contradict each other. Small things at first, timelines, intentions, details she couldn't keep straight anymore. I didn't interrupt. I didn't have to. By the time one of the officers asked Andrea to sit down and slow down, her confidence was gone. What replaced it wasn't remorse. It was frustration at being caught. I answered questions clearly. Dates, symptoms, names. The officer took notes. The other asked Lily a few gentle questions, keeping his voice low. She answered them without hesitation. Andrea watched it happen, her mouth tightening with every word Lily spoke. When the officers asked for the recording, I handed it over. Andrea let out a sharp breath. "You're really doing this?" "Yes," I said. "I am." The officer nodded and stepped aside to make a call. Andrea slumped back, staring at the floor. "You think this makes you strong?" I looked down at Lily. "No," I said. "It makes us done pretending." The officer returned and asked Andrea to stand. She did slowly, like she was still trying to understand how the room had flipped. As they guided her toward the door, Andrea looked back at Lily one last time. "This isn't over," she said. I didn't respond. Lily squeezed my hand once. Outside, the sirens cut off. Inside, the house felt different, not quiet, clear. The house didn't feel victorious after Andrea left. It felt emptied out, like something rotten had finally been cut away, and the air was still adjusting. Lily sat on the couch with her knees pulled up, watching the front window, long after the patrol car disappeared. "They won't come back, right?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not like that." She nodded, accepting it without relief. Relief comes later, sometimes much later. The next few days moved slower than I expected. Not because nothing happened, but because everything happened in pieces. Calls, forms, follow-ups, the kind of process that doesn't care how urgent something feels to the people living inside it. I took leave from work. Not because I was ordered to, but because my commander looked at me and said, "Handle your house first. No judgment, no suspicion, just a directive that felt like support." Medical came next. More blood work, more questions, different doctors this time. They didn't treat me like a problem. They treated me like a case study. This combination would impair anyone over time. One of them said, flipping through notes, "especially under stress." "Would it disqualify me?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not if it stopped when it did. And not if it wasn't your choice." That line mattered. Choice. Lily met with a child psychologist 3 days later. I sat in the waiting room this time, not because they asked me to leave, but because Lily wanted to go in alone. "She talks fine," the doctor said afterward. "What she's been doing isn't mutism, it's compliance." I let that sit. "She's highly observant," the doctor continued. "And she's been protecting you." I didn't smile at that. Pride wasn't the emotion, something closer to grief was. The detective assigned to the case called on day 4. Calm voice, clear questions. "We're building a timeline," she said. "Your sister's messages help. The medical documentation helps more." "And Lily?" I asked. "She's credible," the detective said. "Very." Andrea's lawyer tried to call me that afternoon. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail full of words like misunderstanding and intent. Daniel Cross listened to it later and shook his head. "They're floating trial balloons," he said. "Seeing what sticks." "What sticks?" I asked. "Not much," he said. "She talked too much." That was the understatement of the year. The investigation moved forward. In that quiet, grinding way things do when they're real. No dramatic arrests on the evening news. No shouting matches. Just statements, evidence, and people realizing they'd left fingerprints all over their own stories. Andrea's version shifted every time she told it. First she was helping, then she was misunderstood, then she was reacting to my instability. Each version contradicted the last just enough to make the pattern visible. Lily wasn't questioned repeatedly. They didn't need to. One clean interview, one clear account. That was enough. I stayed home more, not hovering, just present. Lily talked more each day, not because she was pushing herself, but because there was no one telling her not to. She told me about school, about things she'd kept inside because it was easier than sorting them out. One night while I was washing dishes, she said I used to practice not talking. I paused. Practice. In my head, she said, what my face should look like. That hurt more than any report. The legal process kept moving. Andrea was charged formally 2 weeks in. The list was longer than I expected. Endangerment, coercion, interference with medical treatment. The words were dry, but the weight behind them wasn't. Andrea didn't reach out again, not directly. Her lawyer tried once more. Daniel shut it down. At work, nothing collapsed the way Andrea had predicted. My evaluations were reviewed. My file was annotated. The context mattered. The timeline mattered more. One of my supervisors pulled me aside and said, "You should have told someone sooner." "I didn't know," I said. He nodded. "Fair, that was it. No lecture, no doubt." Lily's school adjusted quietly. Teachers were informed, not alarmed. No one treated her like something fragile. That helped more than therapy ever could. A month in, the prosecutor asked Lily if she wanted to write a statement. She said yes. She didn't ask me what to say. She wrote it herself. I read it later alone. It was simple, direct, no drama. Just facts and feelings placed side by side like they belonged together. Andrea pled not guilty. That didn't surprise me. People who believe they're right rarely back down early. The hearing came and went without spectacle. Andrea looked smaller behind the table, not weak, just exposed. I testified once, clear, factual, no speeches. Lily didn't have to testify again. Her recorded statement stood on its own. The judge listened, asked questions, took notes. Time passed, not in chapters, just days stacking on top of each other. Lily started sleeping through the night. I noticed because I stopped listening for movement in the hallway. One morning, she asked, "Are you going back to work soon?" "Yes," I said. "Good," she replied. "I like when you come home tired, just not confused." I laughed at that. Real laughter, short, honest. The ruling came on a Thursday. I was in my kitchen making lunch when Daniel called. "They're moving forward," he said. "Charges stick." I closed my eyes and leaned against the counter. Not relief, just the absence of pressure. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now it goes where it goes," he said. "You don't need to do anything else." After the call, I didn't sit down. I didn't cry. I finished making lunch. Lily looked up from the table. "Is it okay?" "Yes," I said. "It is." She nodded and went back to her sandwich. That evening, I took the bottle out of the drawer for the last time. I didn't examine it. I didn't read the label again. I dropped it in the trash, covered it with paper towels, and tied the bag tight. Then I washed my hands and went back to the living room where Lily was sprawled on the floor, talking to herself as she built something out of blocks. Her voice filled the space without fear. That mattered more than any verdict. Life didn't snap back into place after the charges went through. It eased, slowly, the way a body does when it realizes it's no longer bracing for impact. I went back to work on a Monday. Same parking lot, same badge scan, different awareness. People nodded like they always had. No whispers, no sideways looks. Whatever Andrea had believed about how fragile my career was, she'd been wrong about that too. When I came home that afternoon, Lily was at the kitchen table humming while she worked on a puzzle. She didn't stop when I walked in. She didn't look up to check my mood. She just kept humming soft and off-key. That's how I knew things had shifted. "Did you have a good day?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "We learned about storms. Big ones or little ones?" I asked. "Both," she said. "Some are loud, some you don't see until things fall over." I paused, then smiled. That sounds about right. We settled into a rhythm that felt earned instead of forced. Dinner at the same time most nights. Homework at the table, talking about things that mattered and things that didn't. Lily talked more every day, not in speeches, just in steady, ordinary ways. Sometimes she'd stop mid-sentence like she was checking whether it was still okay. It always was. Therapy became routine, not something we braced for, something we attended. Lily talked about the years she'd spent measuring her words, choosing silence because it felt safer than being wrong. The therapist listened, took notes, never rushed her. I sat in when Lily wanted me there. I waited outside when she didn't. That mattered too. One afternoon, Lily asked, "Why didn't you see it?" The question wasn't angry, it was curious. "I trusted family," I said. "And I trusted myself less than I should have." She nodded. "I thought you were strong." "I am," I said. "Strong people still miss things." She accepted that. Andrea's case moved through the system without me watching every step. I stopped tracking it once I realized I didn't need to. Justice wasn't something I had to supervise. It was something that happened while we lived our lives. One evening, Lily asked if we could go fishing. I hadn't been in years. The rods were dusty. The lake was quiet. We sat on the dock and cast lines without much skill. I don't care if we catch anything, she said. That's usually how it works, I replied. We sat there, feet dangling, talking about school and clouds and whether fish got bored. At one point, Lily said, I don't feel quiet inside anymore. I swallowed. That's good. Sometimes I feel loud, she added. I laughed. That's allowed. At work, my evaluations stabilized. The notes about fatigue faded into the background. My commander asked once if I needed accommodations. I said no. I meant it. The experience didn't make me distrust everyone. It made me more precise about who earned access. Family, I learned, isn't defined by proximity or blood. It's defined by behavior, by who protects and who consumes. Andrea wrote me a letter once. I didn't open it right away. When I finally did, it was full of explanations and self-pity and half-apologies that never quite reached accountability. I didn't respond. Lily never asked about her. One night as I tucked Lily into bed, she said, You didn't yell. I didn't need to, I said. She smiled. That scared her more. She wasn't wrong. The house changed in small ways. Windows opened more often. Music playing while we cooked. The doorbell ringing without my chest tightening. Silence stopped being something we managed and became something we chose. I thought a lot about revenge during that time. People expect it to look like anger or punishment. What it looked like for us was truth placed where it couldn't be ignored. Andrea had expected control to protect her. She hadn't expected the quiet one to speak. She hadn't expected me to listen. Lily started talking about what she wanted to be when she grew up. It changed weekly. Teacher, vet, scientist. She said she liked helping people who didn't know how to ask for help. That's a good skill, I told her. She nodded. I practiced. I still check labels. I still ask questions. Not because I'm afraid, but because attention is part of care. If there's one thing this family revenge story taught me, it's that silence isn't always absence. Sometimes it's strategy. Sometimes it's survival. And sometimes when it breaks, it saves lives. Lily's voice did that. Mine followed. We didn't win because we fought harder. We won because we stopped pretending nothing was wrong. And every day since the house has sounded exactly the way it should, 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 exactly the way it should,